The first time I saw my wife come out of that apartment building, I told myself I had the wrong Subaru. It was raining hard enough to smear the streetlights across my windshield, and my work van smelled like old coffee, wet rubber, and the metal dust that lived in the floor mats. I was supposed to be fixing a furnace for an old man in Bloomfield. Instead, I sat at the curb, staring at Laura's blue Subaru under a broken security light. Then the front door opened. Laura stepped out in her gray wool coat, the one with the missing button on the left sleeve. A young man came out behind her. He was thin, maybe 25, with his hood pulled up and one hand against the brick wall like he needed it to stay steady. Laura turned to him. She put her hand on his chest, not his arm, not his shoulder, his chest. He bowed his head. She was crying. Then she took a white envelope from her purse, slipped it into his hand, and pulled him into a long, quiet hug. I sat there with both hands on the steering wheel while my phone buzzed with another call from the customer waiting for me. For 17 years, I had believed my wife did not know how to lie. That night, watching her hold a stranger in the rain, I realized I might have been wrong about the one thing I had trusted most. Laura and I lived in a small brick house outside Pittsburgh. The kind of house where every room had a memory, and every memory had a sharp edge if you touched it wrong. What people did not see was the room at the end of the hall with the door almost always closed. Our son Noah had been 9 when he died. Even now, that sentence feels impossible. Like language was never built to hold something that heavy. Noah loved frozen waffles, red hoodies, bad knock-knock jokes, and asking questions nobody could answer while I was trying to fix something. Dad, he once asked while I was replacing the garbage disposal, if you can fix machines, how come you can't fix rain? He had been riding his bike near Riverside Park when a driver took the turn too fast. There was no perfect goodbye. One minute our boy was asking if he could stay outside until dinner. And a few hours later, Laura and I were in a hospital room listening to words that seemed to belong to another family. Afterward, the house changed. Laura kept Noah's things close. His sneakers stayed under his bed. His red hoodie stayed on the back of his desk chair. A drawing he had made of the three of us standing in front of our house remained taped inside her closet door. I went the other way. I shut the door. I stopped going to Riverside Park. When letters came from the donor program, I put them in a drawer and pretended the drawer did not exist. Laura tried to talk about it a few times that first year. She would say, "Mark, maybe we should read the letter," or "I wonder who he helped." And I would leave the room. That was the life I thought we had. Wounded, quiet, but honest. Then Laura started taking phone calls on the back porch. At first, I barely noticed. Teachers got calls from parents all the time. But Laura's voice on those calls was different, softer, careful. One Tuesday evening in October, I came home early because a parts delivery had been delayed. Laura was standing on the porch with her back to the kitchen window, phone pressed to her ear. She wore no coat, even though the air had turned cold. "I know," she said. "I know. I'll come Thursday." I opened the sliding door. She turned fast, like I had caught her taking money from my wallet. "Everything okay?" I asked. She covered the phone against her sweater. "Just a parent. What parent needs you at 7 at night?" She blinked once. "It's complicated." After that, Thursday nights became strange. Laura would say she had a curriculum meeting, or that she was stopping by the library to prepare lesson plans. Sometimes she came home smelling faintly of hand sanitizer and some floral perfume she had not worn in years. She would kiss my cheek, put her purse on the chair, and ask if I had eaten. A receipt from a diner across town appeared in the pocket of her coat. 2 bowls of soup, 2 coffees, 1 slice of apple pie. "Who's Denise?" I asked when I saw the name written on the receipt. Laura was washing a plate. She kept washing it long after it was clean. "A woman from school," she said. "What grade?" She shut off the water. "She's not a teacher. She helps with a family support thing." A week later, I found a key. It was small, brass, and attached to a plain red tag with no writing on it. It sat in the back of Laura's desk drawer under rubber bands and old birthday cards from students. It did not fit our doors. It did not fit either car. I stood there under the desk lamp, turning it over in my palm while the neighbor's dog barked in the dark. When Laura came into the room, I closed the drawer too quickly. She looked at me. I looked at her. Neither of us said what we had both seen. That night, she slept facing the window. The next piece came from her phone. Then her phone started living face down. One night, she went upstairs to shower and left it on the nightstand. I was changing out of my work clothes, still wearing 1 boot, when the screen lit up even. "Thank you for coming today. I don't know how to do this without you." Even the next morning, I checked our bank account while sitting in my van outside a supply warehouse. I told myself I was checking whether the mortgage payment had cleared. That was not why. $600 cash, $800 cash, $500 cash, all in 3 weeks. When I asked her about it that night, she was folding dish towels at the kitchen island. Her hands moved faster after I spoke. "It's for school," she said. "What does school need almost $2,000 cash for?" There's a family support fund. Some kids need coats and groceries. It's not official, exactly. Why didn't you tell me? She pressed the towel flat with both palms. Because you've had so much going on. Who is Evan? I asked. Her hands stopped. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. A former student's relative, she said. That's specific. Mark. Instead, I nodded like a man, accepting an invoice he knew was wrong, and walked into the garage. On the fourth Thursday, I told her I had an emergency call in Monroeville. You'll be late? She asked. Probably. She nodded too quickly. I drove to the elementary school instead and parked behind a maintenance shed where the security light was out. I sat there with a gas station sandwich in my lap, cold turkey on wheat bread, and felt more pathetic with every bite. At 6:12, Laura came out carrying a brown grocery bag and a small bunch of yellow flowers. She got into the Subaru and pulled out of the lot. I waited 3 cars, then followed. She drove past the library, past the shopping plaza, past the streets where her coworkers lived. The city lights thickened. Ambulances moved in and out of traffic near St. Catherine's Hospital. Laura turned onto a side street lined with old apartment buildings, the kind with metal fire escapes and mailboxes dented by years of hands. She parked in front of a 3-story brick building with one flickering porch light. I parked half a block away. She took the groceries and flowers inside. I waited 40 minutes. 50. A little over an hour. Then they came outside together. He was younger than I expected. Too young, almost. Thin in a gray hoodie, pale under the streetlight. Laura had one hand under his elbow as if helping him down the steps. He said something. She shook her head. He looked away, then she touched his chest. It was not a quick touch. Her palm rested there with a tenderness that made something hot and ugly rise in me. He covered her hand with his. I reached for the door handle of my van, then she cried. She gave him a white envelope. He tried to refuse it. She pushed it back into his hand. Then she hugged him, and he held on like he was afraid of falling. The next morning, I found what I thought was the truth. Laura went grocery shopping early. I was in the laundry room looking for my work sweatshirt when her old purse slipped off a chair and hit the floor. The contents scattered across the wood. A tube of lip balm, loose receipts, a pen with the school logo, and a folded hospital envelope. I stood there for a long moment, because even then part of me knew there are doors you cannot unopen. Then I picked it up. Inside was a photograph. Laura stood beside a hospital bed. Evan sat in it wearing a gown, wires visible at his collar. An older woman stood on his other side with both hands clasped under her chin. Laura's hand rested on Evan's shoulder. They all looked exhausted, but they were smiling. On the back in blue ink, someone had written, "Because of Noah, I got more time." My son's name hit me harder than Evan's face ever could have. There were other papers. A short-term apartment lease with Laura listed as the person responsible for payment. A hospital schedule. A pharmacy's receipt. A birthday card that began, "Dear Evan, I'm so grateful this year found you still here." I found a small tin box in the bedroom closet after that. I knew I should stop. I did not stop. Inside were copies of the organ donation paperwork, letters from a transplant program, and several pages in Laura's handwriting. Some were addressed to Noah, some to Evan, one to me, never sent. I did not read it. I saw Noah's name too many times and felt my mind close like a fist. By the time Laura came home, I had the hospital envelope and photograph on the kitchen table. She walked in carrying apples, a bag of carrots, and a box of frozen waffles. She always bought the waffles even though neither of us ate them much anymore. Maybe habit, maybe punishment, maybe love. She saw the table and stopped, the grocery bag tilted in her arms. The waffles slid onto the counter. "Who is Evan?" I asked. Her face changed in a way I did not understand then. It was not guilt. It was fear, but not the fear of being caught. More like fear of watching something fragile fall from a high shelf. "Mark," she said. "Who is he?" She set the bag down slowly. "I can explain. That's what people say when they've been lying." Her eyes filled. "It's not what you think." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You don't know what I think." "Yes," she whispered. "I do. That made me angrier than anything else. You have an apartment across town. You're taking cash out of our account. You're getting texts from a man telling you he can't do this without you. I watched you with him, Laura." She flinched. "You followed me." "Apparently I needed to." "No," she said. And now there was anger in her voice too. "You needed to ask me. I did ask you. You asked like a man who had already decided the answer." I slapped the photograph with 2 fingers. "You brought Noah into this. Whatever this is, whatever he is to you, you used our son's name." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked toward the hallway, toward the closed door at the end. "Our son's name," she said slowly, "is not something you get to lock away and then accuse me of using." The room went still. I felt the words land, and because they were true, I treated them like an attack. "Don't turn this on me. I'm not. I'm trying to tell you." "No, you're trying to make me feel guilty because you got caught." She covered her mouth with one hand. Her shoulders shook once. "I wanted to tell you for years," she said. "But every time I says anything about Noah, about what happened after, About the people he helped, you left the room. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. You don't get to blame me for your lies. I'm not blaming you for my choices, she said. I'm telling you why I was alone when I made them. The truth was right there, close enough to touch. But I was too busy bleeding from the wrong wound. I grabbed my keys. Laura stepped toward me. Please don't go. I looked at her hand reaching for me and thought of that same hand on Evan's chest. So I left. I kept seeing the photograph. Because of Noah, I got more time. By dawn, I had a headache and a mouth that tasted like pennies. I drove home to get clothes before work. I expected Laura to be in the kitchen, or maybe in bed, or maybe gone for good. The house was empty. On the kitchen table, where the envelope had been, there was a note. If you can't hear it from me, maybe you can hear it from him. Under it was the address of St. Catherine's Hospital. Cardiology wing. Room 418. Wait, I almost threw the note away. Instead, I drove there. Room 418 was not a room. It was a waiting area outside a cardiac procedure unit. A vending machine hummed in the corner. A television played a cooking show nobody watched. The young man from the apartment sat in a plastic chair with his elbows on his knees. Beside him was the older woman from the photograph, holding a cloth bag full of folders and pill bottles. She looked up when she saw me. Evan did too. Mr. Ellison, he asked. I hated how gentle his voice was. Where's my wife? Getting coffee, the older woman said. She'll be back in a minute. I looked from her to him. I'm not here for coffee. No, Evan said. I know. The older woman stood. I'm Denise, Evan's mom. I did not shake her hand. Evan swallowed. Laura thought maybe I should explain before she tried again. Explain what? He looked down at his chest, and suddenly, before he said it, some part of me knew not enough to understand, enough to be afraid. I received a heart transplant when I was 17, Evan said. Your son was my donor. The room went soft around the edges. I reached for the back of a chair but did not, I said. Because that is what the body says when the mind cannot move fast enough. Denise's eyes filled. We wrote letters through the donor network for years. We never expected anything back. Evan nodded. Your wife wrote first, not names at first, just as mother to a mother. Later, after both families agreed, we learned who each other were. I stared at him, at his hoodie, his pale face, his hand resting lightly over the center of his chest. Laura's hand had been there. Noah. I could hear my own breathing, Evan continued, carefully. I met her in person last year. I was having some complications and I wanted to thank her while I could. I know that sounds dramatic. I didn't mean for it to become. Why the apartment? I asked. My voice sounded far away, Denise answered. We live 3 hours out. Evan's been in and out of St. Catherine's for weeks. Hotels were too expensive. Laura found a short-term place near the hospital. She paid for part of it. We told her not to. The money? Medication copays, Evan said. Gas, food, things this insurance doesn't care about. I closed my eyes. Every piece I had arranged into betrayal shifted and became something else. The key, the receipt, the flowers, the texts, the envelope. Her hand on his chest. I had not uncovered an affair. I had walked in on my wife grieving in the only place I had refused to go with her. Why didn't she tell me? I asked, though I already knew the shape of the answer. Even looked at me with more compassion than I deserved. She said she tried. The words landed quietly. She said when she mentioned the letters, you left the room. When she wondered out loud about recipients, you turned up the TV. When she asked if you wanted to know whether any part of Noah helped someone live, you said, I can't do this. I remembered not all at once, in pieces. Laura at the kitchen table with an envelope in her hand. Me taking out the trash. Laura saying, there was a letter today. Me saying, not tonight. Laura crying in the bathroom on Noah's birthday. Me standing in the hallway and then walking away because I did not know what to do with her tears when mine were already packed so tight inside me. Even touched his chest again. She doesn't come because she forgot him, he said. She comes because she hasn't. Laura appeared at the end of the hall carrying 2 coffees. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes were red, but her face was calm in a way mine was not. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then I did the only thing I could do. I looked away not because I was angry. Because I was ashamed. I left the hospital without speaking to her. That sounds cruel. Maybe it was. But if I had opened my mouth right then, everything inside me would have come out wrong. I had already done enough damage with words sharpened by fear. I drove to Riverside Park. I had not been there in 7 years. The bike path had been repainted. The old maple near the turn had lost a large branch. There were new benches, new signs, new parents pushing strollers, as if the place had not once split my life into before and after. I parked near the basketball court and sat with the engine off. Cold crept into the van. Kids ran across the grass in jackets, shouting about nothing. A little boy with untied sneakers chased a soccer ball and nearly fell. His father called, tie your shoes, buddy, and the boy yelled back, after this. Noah used to say that, after this game, after this lap, after this one more minute of being alive in a world he trusted. I put my hands over my face. For years I had believed I was the strong one because I did not break down. I went to work. I paid bills. I fixed the sink when it leaked. I changed furnace filters. I kept the house standing, but a house can stand and still be empty. Laura had been living with Noah's absence in open air. I had turned mine into a locked room and then punished her for needing a window. When I finally went home, the driveway was empty. I sat at the kitchen table for 20 minutes before I heard her car pull in. She came inside slowly. Her purse hung from one shoulder. She looked older than she had the day before. Or maybe I was finally seeing how tired she had been. I went to the hospital, I said. She nodded. I met Evan. Her fingers tightened around the purse strap. I stood up. Every apology I had rehearsed in the park vanished. All I had was the truth, plain and insufficient. I was wrong. She looked at the floor. I followed you, I said. I searched your things. I accused you of something ugly because I was scared. And I used Noah's name like a weapon when you were trying to keep part of him close. Her eyes closed. I am so sorry, Laura. For a while, the only sound was the old refrigerator kicking on. I should have told you, she said. I shook my head. Yes, but I also made it impossible. You didn't make me lie. No, but I made grief something you had to hide from me. Laura set her purse on the chair. I was lonely, Mark. I was lonely in this house with you standing 10 feet away. I would say his name and you would disappear. I would cry and you would fix things. The porch light, the garbage disposal, the loose hinge on the back door. Anything but sit with me. I didn't know how. I know. Her voice broke, but I didn't either. She walked down the hallway. At first, I thought she was leaving the conversation, but she stopped at Noah's door and opened it. The room smelled like dust, paper, and old wood. Afternoon light crossed the bedspread. His red hoodie still hung on the chair. His sneakers still waited under the bed, small and useless. Laura sat on the edge of the mattress and picked up the hoodie. I stood in the doorway. This time, I stepped inside. I sat beside her. Not touching yet, not fixing, just sitting. After a while, I said, "Tell me about him." "Evan," I said. "Tell me about Evan." Laura pressed the hoodie to her lap. He wanted to be a music teacher before he got sick. He still plays guitar when his hands aren't shaking. His mom calls him stubborn like it's a medical condition. He hates hospital oatmeal. He sends me a text every year on Noah's birthday. Just one sentence. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. Still here because of him. I looked at Noah's sneakers. Something inside me broke, but not the way I had feared. It was more like ice cracking on a river, frightening and necessary. A few days later, Evan had a procedure scheduled. Laura was standing by the door with her purse over her shoulder when I came downstairs. Her face had the careful expression people wear when they expect disappointment and try not to show it. "I'll be back this afternoon," she said. I picked up my coat from the chair. She watched me. "I'd like to come," I said, "if that's okay." For a moment, she did not answer. Then she nodded. The drive to the hospital was quiet, but not like before. It was not the silence of secrets. It was the silence of two people carrying something heavy together and learning the weight of the other side. At St. Catherine's, Denise hugged Laura first. Then she looked at me with uncertainty. I offered my hand this time. She took it. Evan was sitting on the edge of the bed in a hospital gown, trying to make a joke about the socks with rubber grips. He looked nervous. "Mr. Ellison," he said. "Mark," I said. He nodded. "Mark, there were a dozen things I could have said. I could have apologized for staring at him like an accusation. I could have asked medical questions I would not understand. I could have told him about Noah, about the waffles and the red hoodie, and the way he believed I could repair anything. Instead, when the nurse came to wheel him back, I stepped forward and put a hand on his shoulder. My voice almost failed me. "Take care of that heart," I said. Evan's eyes filled. He covered my hand with his. "I will." Laura turned away, but not before I saw her mouth tremble. The procedure took 3 hours, maybe more. Time in a waiting room does not behave like time anywhere else. Denise prayed silently, with her thumb pressed against her knuckles. Laura sat beside me, twisting the strap of her purse until I reached over and gently took her hand. She let me. The coffee from the machine was too hot and tasted like burnt cardboard. We drank it anyway. At some point, Laura leaned her head against my shoulder. I did not say, "It'll be okay," because I did not know that. I said, "I'm here." Her hand tightened around mine, even came through. The doctor said the words carefully, but the meaning was clear enough. Stable, successful rest, and I cried into both hands. Laura cried too. I stood there in the hallway with my arm around my wife and felt grief and gratitude move through the same space in my chest without canceling each other out. I used to think healing meant the pain would get smaller. Now I think maybe it means the room around it gets larger. I started going with her to a support group for donor families. The first time, I sat in the back with my arms crossed and said my name so quietly, the woman leading the group had to ask me to repeat it. I did not tell Noah's story that night, or the next, but I stayed on Saturdays. I opened Noah's door, at first only for a few minutes. I dusted the dresser. I straightened the books on his shelf. I picked up the red hoodie once and held it like it might vanish if I breathed too hard. One morning, Laura found me sitting on the floor, reading a comic book Noah had left half open 7 years earlier. She sat beside me without speaking. After a while, I said, "He never finished this one." Laura smiled through tears. He said the villain was too obvious. He was probably right. I still think about that night in the rain sometimes. The apartment building. Laura's hand on Evan's chest. The envelope. The hug. I had seen all of it and understood none of it. That is the dangerous thing about pain. It makes a story out of fear and hands you the ending before you have heard the truth. My wife had a secret, yes. But it was not built from betrayal. It was built from the part of our grief I had refused to enter. The part where our son was gone and still, impossibly, had left something living behind. For years, I thought keeping Noah's door closed was how I survived. Now, every Saturday morning, I open it. Dust floats in the light. The house stays quiet. Laura makes coffee in the kitchen. Sometimes she says Noah's name. Sometimes I do. And the world does not end. It only hurts, then it lets us breathe.